Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of the What Women Want Today podcast. I'm your host, Terry Kellums, and today I have a guest on the show with me, Deanna Radalusko. Did I mess it up? I know I messed it up.
It was close. It was
It was
close.
close.
Yeah, it was good enough. Good enough.
Well, welcome to the show. I'm so happy that you're here with me today. I know that you are a fellow podcaster. How long have you been podcasting?
4 years.
And the name of your
4 years.
podcast is Label Free Podcast.
Yes. To live your best life, live label free.
I love that. So what made you want to do a podcast?
Well, as I know, we're going to be jumping into some of my story and my history. After my late husband passed away, I came to a point where I was just like tired of all the labels that people are putting on me. Like I was a widow. I shouldn't try to date. How dare you start your life over? Like, you need to be XYZ, just a lot of different negative things that were like put on me. And I put on myself too. Like I was also like in that headspace. And so I just came to a place where I was feeling very peaceful. I was waking up grateful every day, a lot of joy. And then it took me several years after he passed to get to that place. And I'm just like, you know what? I got an article for how to start a podcast under $100. And I'm like, I don't know who the F I think I am, but I'm going to do it. And I was talking to my best friend about my idea. Like, I'm tired of society and ourselves putting labels on each other, which causes division, causes just like this, like, kind of like what we've been experiencing the last couple of years. And
Sure.
I think that it's a very powerful message across the board, and it means something different to everyone. And so for me, it was just, I didn't want to carry those labels anymore. I was leaving them at the door, and every conversation I have is about how we get past those and how we live a life of purpose and being dynamic and, not having any self-limiting beliefs.
I love that so much. There's one label that has been placed on me, which I think is meant as a compliment. I'm pretty sure it's labeled as a compliment, but at the same time, it puts a lot of pressure on you as a woman, and that is the word strong. You're a strong
Yeah.
woman,
Oh,
Terry.
yeah.
You're a strong woman.
Yeah.
And it's almost like, okay, well, that means you can't break down, you can't have bad days, you can't fall down. You know what I mean? You just always have to just be strong because that's the label that's been given to you. So I'm really glad to hear you say that. That's very affirming for me that I don't always accept that word as a compliment. I think it's like almost saying I can't be vulnerable. And I struggle so hard to be vulnerable sometimes that I'm really shrugging off that strong label these days. What do you think the most difficult label was for you to shrug off and keep off?
It's like something that, I had a belief of like that I wasn't worth it. And so, into this next phase of my life, after all the things that I've been through, it's like I'm worth it. Like I deserve all the best that life has to offer. I deserve to be happy. I'm not damaged goods because I went through all this stuff. And the podcast has been very healing for me and very cathartic, being, I have no more skeletons in my closet, none whatsoever. Everything is out there, completely open. And, so like that is like the first episode I ever did around, what I know we're going to get into about being a human trafficking survivor or victim, whatever. I felt the weight of the world, like, just went off my shoulders. It was so liberating and so freeing that was the point of, something I never felt before. It felt very good.
Oh, I'm glad to hear you say that. I know about the domestic violence side of what you've been through, but I can't imagine the human trafficking side. And this is a heavy topic today. And as I was preparing for it and actually found you on one of the sites that we both belong to, my initial response was, I don't want to talk about that. That's hard. Yeah. That's tough. That opens up a lot of wounds. That's difficult. But this year on the podcast, I am not going to shy away from difficult things. Typically I want to, bring things that, almost like you said, just like bring people together and not tear them apart. But this is one of those things, like you and I talked about before, it's necessary. It's painful. You're at the airport, you go into a bathroom stall and you see, the plaque on the door that says, if you're a victim of human trafficking, call this number. And I remember the first time I ever saw it, I thought, well, how the hell are they supposed to call that number?
Yeah.
And This is just so I have a definition here because I wanted to make sure I truly understood what human trafficking was, because we hear a lot about it on the news. But the definition that I found online was the unlawful act of transporting or coercing people in order to benefit from their work or service, typically in the form of forced labor or sexual exploitation. Do you fall into that category? Is that your definition?
Yeah, I mean, it means many different things. I mean, that's like I guess the dictionary version of it. But
Mm-hmm.
what people think is, oh, girls get kidnapped and they get shipped off to God knows where. That's one definition of human trafficking, or one avenue of it.
Segment.
Other
Yeah.
segment of it. Yeah, I mean, there's many, like the girl or the boy that's getting molested by a family member or parent. That's human trafficking, because you're exploiting them for sexual favors, sexual abuse. It's sexual abuse, and they define that as sexual or human trafficking as well. So that's one. Obviously, like people that they're forcing to work, elderly people, forcing them to work, and in unsavory conditions. That's one. I mean, there are. When I worked with one of the charities, I did a big huge event against human trafficking. When I worked with them and I sat down with them and I talked to them for several hours before we decided to work together. And some of the stories I heard were just unreal. And I went to a lot of the meetings that were like at the villages and the churches, just to kind of wanted to educate myself a little bit more. Like, why wasn't I aware of this when I got like dragged into it? Right. Why didn't I know? And it's because, people don't like to talk about it. It took me 8 months to organize that event, and during that time frame, there were so many women that like reached out to me, on the side, and just said, "Thank you for what you're doing." I would never have the courage to tell my story, and I was a victim. Like, there were many women that reached out to me like secretly, and they just said, "Please don't tell anybody my name," and thanked me for what I was doing, and I was just like, "Wow, this is it's so." I think that needs to be talked about more, because if we talk about it more and educate families, kids at school, what this means and what the possibilities are, the better off we're arming them to knowledge is power, right? So they know what that means. You give them the opportunity to say no, or to get help.
Right. So I was not entirely shocked to hear that 70% of victims of human trafficking are women.
Yes.
Average age is 12 years old. These are like, these like make you sick to your stomach. It's happening all over the world, millions. Most common countries are Africa, and I wrote down my notes. I can't even read my own handwriting. Middle East, the Middle East, and Sudan, I think it says. I can't read it. Russia, China. And these are situations where people are living in poverty, so they're very vulnerable, or women are not valued for their gender. And so it's just so much easier to, get them into this trap, right? What do you think? Because you're more of an expert than I am. I'm just, reciting Google statistics here, but what do you think puts someone at risk for human trafficking?
So my situation, I was 17. It was just, and I know I have other friends that this happened to as well, getting involved with a boyfriend. Maybe you didn't have a good father figure at home, or two parents that, were kind of absent. I think that any, younger person that's looking for attention in some way might attract the wrong type of attention, and it turns into something very ugly. And you think that that's okay, and you want to do anything to please that person, and you're just like, and then next thing you know, you're doing drugs, and you're being passed around, and you're a money-making machine, doing things that you never thought that you would do. And it's it's pretty sad, because you didn't know, like, oh, this is a possibility. You think this person loves me, I'm doing this to make them happy, and that's not the case.
Wow, that's pretty heavy.
Yeah.
I live down near the border of Mexico in southern Arizona, and they're always talking about like the people smuggling aspect of human trafficking. The cartels are using everyday people, and forcing them into criminal activity. That's another aspect of human trafficking. You know what one surprised me maybe the most was for the removal of organs.
Oh yeah. Well, I don't know a lot about that. And when I was working with the charities, they didn't run into that a lot. But yeah, that's a thing. That's a
Yeah.
thing.
So there's we need to raise the level of awareness on this topic for sure. For sure.
Yeah.
And I'm going to put some information in the show notes for today's episode. There's a website, traffingresourcecenter.org. So I'll make sure I put that in the show notes for today. I've got some emails and some hotline numbers. If you know somebody that might be at risk or suspect human trafficking. But let's dive into your story a little bit. So you said you were 17. Let's hear about
Mhm.
how this all started for you.
Um, well, I mean, I got involved with a boyfriend that encouraged me to do things that weren't good. I mean, my father was abusive. He was abusive to me and my mother. Then I got involved with the man who was abusive. It took me a long time to really break that pattern, and I realized when I was probably like 21, I'm like, okay, I can't keep living this life. I'm going to either end up dead or, or something. So I ended up finding a counselor on my own and started going through counseling. But those couple years were, kind of like a blur, just doing what you see in the movies, doing lots of drugs and being passed around and making money and just like that and he had ended up like abducting me and stabbing me and almost killing me. So
Oh my
I
God.
think thankfully I got out of that situation. But and I had girlfriends that were going through the same thing, and I don't know if they're still alive or not, but it's very interesting. I was blessed to have a good head on my shoulders. I mean, I'm not really an addictive personality, so luckily the drugs didn't take, or else that could have been something completely different.
Right.
And I got away from that and got into some counseling, and eventually I got real big into the gym. I started working out a lot, and that's where I found some of my like healing and just my strength too. I mean, I was a strong person too. I was always told, "Oh, you're so strong. You're a warrior. You're a gladiator." And so it was like, if I needed help, it's not like I could ask for it, because
Yeah.
I had that label put on me. And so
Yeah.
it was like I had to find a way to find help myself. And I ended up meeting my late husband at the gym. One of my girlfriends came to meet me, and he wanted to get an introduction, and he pursued me for like 6 months because I was trying to just like really heal from that last relationship. And he was kind of like my knight in shining armor, and we ended up being together for almost 20 years before he passed. Oops.
I'm sorry for your loss. So it wasn't your husband then that was the abuser. I just want to make that clear. It was
No.
the man before
Yeah.
your husband. So, interesting enough, we are doing a book writing challenge on the podcast, through the podcast, I guess. And
Very
a
cool.
lot of women are writing books to kind of help with the healing process. Is that something that you've considered doing?
I have considered doing that. How long does a book have to be, or the section?
It does. It's up to you, but they say, those experts, quote unquote, they
Yeah.
say, around 150 pages is probably, but I've read larger ones than that. My co-host Elizabeth, she wrote a 400-page memoir, and yeah. So let me ask you this, because of the book, my mom was abused. I was a witness to her domestic violence for years, and she never talked about it. She never explained why things were happening or why she stayed, or none of that was ever really talked about. My mom was very quiet, kept a lot of that stuff to herself. But part of this book challenge is that we're sitting down for 20 minutes every day and we're putting these things down on the paper, and
Yeah.
it's been stirring up some memories. And I was writing something down, and I thought, oh, she has a friend that's still around that I'm friends with on Facebook. I'm gonna call this woman up.
There you go.
And I told my husband, I said, I'm gonna call her. And I texted her or Facebook Messenger, and I said, she's willing to talk to me. I go, I'm gonna call her. And he goes, well, what are you gonna ask her? And I go, I don't know, but we're about to find out.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I asked her, I said, did my mom ever confide in you? No. Did you
Really.
did you know what was going
Yeah, no
on?
support.
Yeah. She said, we suspected there were things that we saw, um, that we didn't think were quite right, but she would never talk about it. And at some point, she distanced herself from the friendship with this woman. And I think it was just to continue to hide. and
Yeah.
so I guess maybe, I don't know if you'll know the answer to this question, or it's kind of a general question, but why do you think women protect the abuser?
I mean, a lot of reasons. I think that because they're scared,
Mm,
they're scared of what that would look like if something happened. They don't know their way out. Your identity gets so wrapped up in that situation that it's really hard unless you're ready. I mean, no, if someone can talk to you until you're blue in the face and you're not going to go.
yeah.
I eventually I had it. Like, I can't, luckily I came to a point where I had it. And, even after he abducted me and like stabbed me, and like he had broken into my house twice, like there was several things that had happened. But even after that last, where he abducted me, and I, my mom forced me to call the police, and we had to go to court, and then he got arrested. I was sitting there bawling, like, because I didn't want that to happen to him, even though it was completely wrong and I could have died. I ended up like running out of the car, and just, it's like a movie, it's crazy when you think about it. But even at that point, I'm like crying, like, oh my God, I don't want to do this to him. I don't want him to be in jail, but I knew at that point, like I had to distance myself, and, luckily I got away. But I think that it's your identity and the shame of dealing with it. Like your self-worth is so low that you feel like that's all you deserve.
Mm. She said something similar. I said, why, after she left and got out of the situation, I said, why do you think she never, talked to us girls about it? Because I mean, you're susceptible as a girl growing up in the household, watching your mom get abused like that. You're so
Yeah.
susceptible to picking a partner just like that. I said, why do you think yeah, why do you think she didn't say anything to us? And she said, I think she felt shameful, like somehow she deserved that, and she didn't want to talk about it because she didn't want you girls to feel less of her. And I was
Yeah.
like, I can't wrap my brain around that. It's
Yeah.
hard. It's hard for the person who hasn't physically lived through it to wrap your brain around some of the things that you're saying. Do you understand? Does that make sense to you?
No, it does make sense. She probably knew, like, when it first started happening, she should leave. And so the fact that she didn't leave in the beginning made her feel worse and worse and worse that she stayed in. So at a certain point, she kind of dug her own hole mentally and emotionally, even
Yeah.
though no matter whatever stage you're in within a relationship like that, it's never too late to get out. You deserve better. You
Right.
deserve better. That's why I'm so much for like women empowerment. I believe that we can be strong and vulnerable at the same time, and that doesn't make us any less than, or weak or anything like that. I'm
Mhm.
finally, like you maybe, at a place where I can feel vulnerable even though I've been through all that stuff, and it's a very good place to be. So I think that no matter what stage any woman is in, that they deserve to live a life free of abuse.
I absolutely agree. I had a partner, and I won't say who he is because I don't want to hurt some people in my life, but I had a partner who was starting to get physically abusive with me when I refused to have sex.
Oh my
And
goodness.
I put a knife underneath the mattress. And the next time he did it, I pulled it out and I said, if you touch me again, I will stab you while you were sleeping and I will kill you. And I meant
Good for you.
it. I think I really
Yeah.
meant it. And I was pretty young, but I had seen my mom. I saw my dad, my real father, abuse her. And then I turned around and watched my stepdad abuse her for years. And I am like, you are not doing this to me. I am not putting up with this. And
Yeah.
I mean, I am menopause Terry now, who has a much louder voice and, much more,
Yeah.
I feel much more confident in my voice. I wasn't that confident girl back then, but I was
Yeah.
determined, you are not going to abuse me. So did you have any children?
No, I don't have any children. Not yet.
Okay.
We're still hopeful. We're going to do IVF because I'm
Oh,
definitely in the
good luck.
later stage of life. I'm going to need
Yeah.
help. So, yeah.
What do you think you would say to your daughter? Like, do you have any idea what you'd say to your daughter if you saw her exhibiting some signs of being in a relationship like that?
So I have a niece, and my whole world changed when I had a niece. She is 7 now. And the way I feel about her, I'm sure I'd feel 10 times more about my own daughter. And I just know that if anything ever happened to her, I would go to the deepest, darkest corners of the earth to kill anyone that harmed her.
Mm,
And I don't even know what it would feel like if I had my own daughter, because the way I feel towards my niece, and it's just like, No, I wouldn't tolerate that. Like, I would not. Like, I'd probably like have to take her, me and my sister probably take her, throw her somewhere, like lock her up to get her some real deep, like, you deserve better.
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't. I mean, there's like, I think that this day and age, we need to talk more about like emotional and mental well-being and like mindset, because mindset is a very key component of living a successful life and getting what you deserve. And
Absolutely.
there's something that goes on with us at a certain point in our like younger years where we feel like it's okay to tolerate something like that.
Yes.
Like you said, you grew up around it. Luckily, you didn't repeat that pattern. I grew up around it and I repeated that pattern. So what's the difference in our mindsets, right? Like, why did I feel like that was okay and I continued the cycle and you did not? You know what I mean? So I feel like there's something that needs to be done there, and is part of like that, the education and teaching our children when they're younger,
Yeah.
to kind of guide them so they don't feel like that's okay to deal with.
Yeah. You want to hear something crazy? My sister was 2 years older than me. She dated a man who abused her, then married a different man that abused her. And then when she finally got away from him, and unfortunately she had 2 kids with him, but she got away from him, she met a really, really nice man. And at some point during her marriage to this nice man, she was in counseling and she wasn't happy with this nice man. And her counselor said to her, well, you're used to chaos. And if you don't have it, you create it. And she didn't know how to handle a normal relationship with a nice guy, and so yeah, it is funny how I hadn't thought about it like you just put it, but I really have to agree with you. It is a lot about mindset. It's about who you tell yourself who you are and what you believe about yourself.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, I'm the oldest of 5, so I have 2 younger sisters, 2 younger brothers, and my sisters didn't go through that. They didn't choose a partner like that. But I also took the brunt of it. And when I was like 15, 16, I called the police on my father. Like, I didn't want my siblings to go through what I had gone through.
Mm-hmm.
And so, in a sense, I kind of protected them from going through that, because that would have just carried down, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember grabbing my little sister, who was his natural child. And when he would start, we could hear it in our bedroom, and I would grab her and bring her into the bed. We had bunk beds, and I would sing to her so she couldn't hear, what was going on. So yeah, this I knew this was not gonna, I knew this was not going to be an easy topic for me today, but I so appreciate you being brave enough to come on and share it. And so tell us the other side of it. So once you break away from being a victim of human trafficking and being domestically abused, how do you have a normal relationship with a nice, good guy?
I mean, it's still a work in process, or progress, whatever you want to call it. I mean, I don't, marriage is hard,
Oh yeah.
and I was with my late husband for 17 years. He passed away 7 years ago. Although we looked like the ultimate couple on the outside, on the inside, it wasn't the best either. He was a big steroid abuser. He passed away because he needed his 3rd kidney transplant. He wouldn't stop taking steroids. He was incredibly controlling. So I went from a physically abusive man to a man that just completely controlled me. Like, I could never spend any time away. Like, probably in our 20 years together, I was spent maybe a total of 10 days away from him. And so, like, I couldn't even go out for tea with my sisters and my mom, my grandmother, like we'd have like a tea, whatever, Sunday or something. And he just wouldn't, we would have a huge fight over it. So I just would not go out anymore, because I didn't want to, I just felt like it wasn't worth it.
Yeah.
We were very successful. We had 5 businesses. I was the vice president of key accounts and business operations. And, he gave me a lot of credit during that time. I'm the driver. I drive things forward. I like to get things done. I'm a decision maker, so I will own it. I was that person. When he passed away, I lost almost everything, because he did have 4 daughters from a previous marriage. He was a bit older than me. And that, during that time together, we, flew private, had the mansion, the Ferrari, the Mercedes, motorcycles, just you name it. big lavish parties, you know, like we did all the things. And, you know, when he passed, you know, he specifically disinherited me in the will, which was a very big blow after investing most of my life with him, almost half my life at that point, you know.
Wow.
And you know, that was very hard to come back from, you know, but I made it after he passed and I moved on. And here's the crazy thing, I got involved with another real abusive guy
Oh my gosh.
right after that. Like, and he was abusive and 10 times, like, in I don't even know how to explain it because it's very graphic, but there were things that he was saying to women that were like, he was with me and cheating on me, talking to these women, saying crazy things, like telling him that we had kids in the basement, that, you know, like he was into kid, like just I had the police at my house so many times trying to get him out. He wouldn't leave. It was nuts. Like that was probably the worst. That was probably the worst. He was somewhat physically abusive, but more emotionally and mentally and verbally than anything. So it was bizarre.
Yeah.
So after that, I took a break. I took a break from men for a while. Like, no more.
I did not escape the second scenario that you described. I was never physically abused by my second husband, but the emotional abuse, the manipulation, you know, controlling
That's almost
money.
worse.
It kind of is, because it messes with your head. And, you know, he would use religious things to manipulate me. And it was just a very different kind of abuse. Made you question who you were, made you think you were crazy sometimes.
A narcissist.
Yeah, I don't know if I don't know if I've thought about it enough to put that label on him or not, but he just controlled me so much, and controlled the way I even tried to control the way I parented my daughters. And I remember after I finally got out of the marriage, like I want to say I was 40, maybe I think I was 40. I thought, who the hell am I? I'm so used to someone telling me who to be, what to think. And if I don't believe the way you believe or think the way you think, I'm wrong. And I'm like, okay, I got to figure this thing out now. I'm pretty old to be trying to figure out who I am, but you can do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can do it
it
at any age, at any age.
Yeah, I
Um,
agree.
I hope you don't mind the label resilient, because that's what I heard over and over and over. Like the whole time you're telling the story, it's like resilient. She's just super resilient because you keep getting through these awful situations. So tell us what's go ahead.
No. I think we're all resilient once we set our mind to it. You know, like life is way too short. I mean, that was one thing that was a wake up call for me. Not a wake up call. It was pretty surreal watching my husband lose his battle with life. When you watch someone day in and day out over the course of several years, just like lose his battle with life, it like makes you look at things differently.
Imagine. So what's next for you?
What's next for me? I mean, well, I am the host of Label Free Podcast. I'm the head coach and founding partner of the Female Podcasters Network. So I'm all about supporting women in this space and uplifting their voices and making sure that, you know, helping them get to the next level. So what's next for me is, you know, probably being more of a keynote speaker around things that I'm passionate about, the things that matter, especially this day and age. You know, and I would like to write a book. I am just so like overwhelmed by the thought of it, though. So, you know, I mean, I'm lucky enough to have a man at this point in my life he is wonderful. He is wonderful, very nice. He's a police officer, so I feel super protected in every which way, that supports me in whatever I want to do. So, you know, it's all like the sky's the limit, I guess, at this point.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to hang out with me a little bit today and share your very vulnerable story. I appreciate you so much.
I appreciate you, Terry. Thank you.